She said it without hesitation. Your face will ruin my wedding album. It was like a slap I didn't see coming. Clara stands frozen in her kitchen, staring at the text from her daughter Emma, the words burning into her heart. It's the latest in a series of dismissals, but this one feels like a final betrayal. Emma's wedding has become a symbol of everything Clara's been erased from, everything she's let herself be erased from for years, but not anymore. I'm curious. Where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. She stood at the kitchen counter, phone trembling in her hand, the screen glowing with the message she'd already read 3 times. Mom, you can't sit near the photographer. Your face will ruin my wedding album. The words burned. They weren't veiled or soft, just sharp, clinical, like someone swiping dust off a shelf. Clara blinked, trying to will them into something different, something less cruel. But the text stayed there, flat and final. Steam curled from the kettle. She turned it off with a slow twist, barely hearing the metal click. Her reflection in the dark oven door caught her eye. Tired eyes, silver-streaked hair in a loose bun. Faint crow's feet earned from years of smiling when she didn't feel like it. Was this the face her daughter couldn't bear to see? She sat down, placing the phone carefully beside her as if it might shatter. The old dining table groaned beneath her elbows. A cake plate sat in the center, half a lemon pound cake she'd baked the day Emma was born. A tradition she still kept, until now. She pushed it aside. The ache started in her chest. Not sharp, not sudden, just heavy. Years unraveled inside her, like fabric catching on a nail. The birthday parties she'd stayed up all night planning. The college tuition she quietly helped cover with extra the times she swallowed her own sadness, so Emma wouldn't have to see. She'd chalked up Emma's coolness to stress, to ambition, to her father's bluntness. But this was different. It was deliberate. It was meant to wound. Clara stood up and wandered into the living room. It was tidy, too tidy. Pillows fluffed, books aligned, wedding invitations still propped on the mantel like a promise. She walked to it slowly, heels soft against the wood floor. Her fingers brushed the gold-foiled lettering. Emma and Daniel. April. She remembered the day the card arrived, how she'd cried not because she was invited, but because she still believed there was room for her in her daughter's life. Now she knew better. Clara stared at the card, pulse quickening. A hollow, hot anger bloomed in her stomach. Not fury, not loud, just the kind that settles in your bones and reshapes you, the kind that makes a woman stop asking what she did wrong and start asking what she deserves. She walked to the hallway mirror and looked herself over. Her face, the one Emma wanted hidden, looked back, lined. Yes, worn, maybe. But there was kindness in it. Grace, years of endurance that had nothing to do with glamour and everything to do with strength. And damn it, she looked good, real, alive. Her fingers clenched the edge of the console table. She'd always let things slide, always let Emma rewrite the script. Maybe she thought it was love, maybe it was fear. But this crossed something. A line she didn't know she'd drawn until now. She turned, gaze falling back to the invitation. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she walked to the fireplace, picked it up and held it under the lamplight. Not to tear it, not yet. A plan was taking shape. Not spiteful, not petty, but deliberate. She was done being erased. If Emma didn't want her in the pictures, fine. But Clara would make sure no one could ignore her presence. Not on that day, not anymore. She stood in the quiet of her living room, the invitation in one hand, her reflection in the other, and whispered to herself, "We'll see about that." It was no longer about the wedding. It was about me, and I was going to make sure Emma understood that. The morning sun felt mocking as Clara slipped back into the kitchen, eyes bleary with restless thoughts. She ran a kettle again, not because she needed tea, but because she needed time to sort through her anger. She spread newspaper across the dining table and placed Emma's invitation on top, staring at the elegant font that now felt like a taunt. Pouring herself a cup, she let it grow cold. Memories surfaced unbidden. Emma's teenage years, when her daughter's eyes had glowed with dreams, while hers dimmed under grocery shifts and endless volunteer hours. The time she'd spent at PTA meetings, parent-teacher conferences, hallways where no one said her name, all for someone who now told her face was objectionable. Clara rested her hand on the invitation. The venue, Rosewood Manor, a sprawling estate, famed for its manicured lawns and marble hallways. She'd seen the catalog, white columns, crystal chandeliers, bespoke menu, no expense spared, of course, suited someone who cared more about appearances than people. She filled her mug again and opened the browser, typed Rosewood Manor wedding venue. The site gleamed with staged images, glass-walled reception halls, brides laughing with champagne glasses, a gazebo framed by flowering vines. She scrolled through reviews and pricing tiers. Premium package, platinum, custom floral. Her pulse slowed. Maybe it had been years since she'd felt this alive, not because of hope or happiness, but because of clarity. For too long she'd bent to every expectation. Now she saw the path clearly. She clicked contact us, scanned phone numbers. Her finger hovered. Then she dialed. Later that morning, Clara sat in the foyer of a courthouse-style building, warming her hands over a second cup of tea. She carried a slim folder, notes, printed excerpts from Rosewood's payment and cancellation policy, and her own statement of intent. The venue's coordinator, a polished woman in a charcoal suit, smiled when she recognized Clara's invitation in her hand. Ms. Whitman, Emma's booking is complete. April 14 is set. She tapped a tablet. I see, it's non-refundable. Clara nodded. She let the coordinator guide her to an office with floor-to-ceiling windows. They sat across an oak desk. The coordinator began explaining Rosewood's terms. No cancellation unless under extraordinary legal circumstances. Exclusive dates, reserved months in advance. Reselling depends on another booking client. No guarantee. Clara listened, heart steady. She typed notes discreetly into her notebook. Then, polite but firm, let me get this straight. If I were to say book the same venue for the same date, before the next 6 months, Emma would risk losing the space. The coordinator hesitated. That could void her contract. Yes, she cleared her throat. But it's competitive. That slot is usually taken within a week of release. Clara leaned forward. And who controls the calendar? Venue management, yes, but anyone can apply if the date is unreserved. Clara's lips curled. Good to know. That afternoon, Clara sat by the window in her living room, browsing Rosewood's online reservation portal. The April 14 slot was locked, but there was a wait list for future cancellation. She researched owners, deposit tiers, the exact birthday of nuns at a neighboring convent, places likely canceling. She mapped a strategy. First, pay for every available date surrounding then. Second, reach out to the venue manager under a business alias, something like Larkin Lily Events, expressing interest in the April 14 anniversary renovation showcase. She planned to propose hosting a small, tasteful event, art exhibit, not wedding, and quickly submit a deposit. In case of space conflict, I get priority. She mused aloud. The plan felt audacious, vindictive, but not reckless. She trusted calm resolve would guide her. That night, she drafted a mock email for Larkin Lily Events. Crisp tone, professional, neutral. Subject, venue inquiry, April 14 availability. She paused, let her heart steady, then she sent it off. On her phone she bookmarked an article about venue policy loophole. She reread it twice, then shut the laptop. The moonlight pooled on the floorboards. Clara stood in the middle of her living room again, invitation in hand. She breathed deeply. This wasn't a stunt. It was justice. She felt alive with it, clear and intentional. Tomorrow she'd confirm the booking. Emma's wedding venue taken, and Clara would step forward, no longer hidden in anyone's picture. Emma thought she could silence me, but she had no idea that I was about to take everything from her. The morning sunlight fell gently through the blinds, but Clara's hands trembled just enough as she lifted her mug. The heating steam blurred her reflection. One more woman lost to politeness and invisible roles. Not anymore. Inside her tote lay a freshly printed folder, Larkin Lily Events, composed in crisp business font. It contained polished references. Her name, not Emma's as the contact. Her history hosting community workshops, municipal permits, a draft contract and deposit check. Clara traced the lettering with a fingertip, powerful and calm. She thought, this is my story now. At the entrance to Rosewood Manor, Clara inhaled steady air. The scent of clipped grass, stone archways and pastel blooms carried both rebellion and relief. Inside she nodded to the receptionist, who barely glanced her way. She gave her name, here for the 2 p.m. meeting. In the manager's office, oak-paneled and sunlit, Clara met Grace Holloway, mid-40s, polished. No surprise, She had all the right looks and no clue what was coming. Clara returned the smile. They shook hands, calm. Yes, confidence will win. Thank you for meeting me. Clara began. I'm here about April 14 availability. She slid the folder forward. Grace leaned in, brow raised. Clara led with professionalism. I represent a tasteful event. Private art installation and luncheon. All compliance. Permits. Security. Fully covered. Grace skimmed the folder. April 14 is already booked. She tapped the screen. But, your paperwork is solid. I'll review and let you know by tomorrow. Inside, Clara tasted something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. At home that evening, Clara placed the deposit check in the bank's overnight drop box. She tracked the transfer confirmation. Each ping of email notifications felt like a drumbeat. Tomorrow would come. And with it her quiet victory. She spent the night drafting a letter to Emma. No scold. She didn't want to be the desperate mother, just a woman who'd been erased. Now see. Draft 1 April. Emma, I'm writing to tell you that I've arranged a booking at Rosewood Manor for April 14. Not a wedding, but a private event. I didn't want to discuss it until it was confirmed. There's still time for your plans to adapt. But I also needed you to understand. That date, that venue has meaning for both of us. I'm no longer content in the margins. This is my boundary. Love, Mom. She paused at each comma, each phrase. This was the polite assertion she'd never allowed herself before. The week passed with the slow click of clocks. Clara arranged catering quotes, insurance paperwork and florals for the installation. She lingered in that zone. Organized, competent, unshakably present. Friends assumed she was hosting an upscale art lunch. A few congratulated her quietly. She nodded. Thanks. It means a lot. As if it meant a life rediscovered. Each night she revised the letter. Soft words, firm boundaries, polished and clear. She rehearsed what she'd say if Emma called. On the eve of April 7, the confirmation arrived. The venue booking under Larkin Lilly Events was officially locked in. Grace Holloway sent the signed contract, key codes and caterer's contact. The event would proceed. Date reserved. Clara exhaled like a woman crossing a river at last. She printed the confirmation and tucked it into the folder next to Emma's letter. She signed it with a simple flourish. Mom. Tomorrow she would mail it. That night Clara stood by her front window looking at the moon overhead. April's breath was cool against the pane. Emma, she imagined, was busy with bridesmaid fittings and floral boards, oblivious to the storm about to hit. A curveball. Yes, a reckoning. For them both. Clara's breath settled steady and sure. No regrets. She had spent too many years erasing herself. Now they would all see that she existed. And that she commanded her own space. She placed the letter by the envelope opener. Tomorrow she'd send it before dawn. Then everything would change. She stood firm, invitation in one hand, confirmation in the other, ready to cross a line Emma never thought she'd draw. I thought I had everything under control, but when the phone rang, I realized I had underestimated Emma. That morning, Clara held her freshly sealed envelope in one hand, heart pulsing with triumph. She sipped tea and felt an unfamiliar thrill. Control, agency, presence. Then the phone rang. The display blinked. Emma Whitman. Clara's breath, her instinct, expected confrontation, anger, denial, recrimination. But something in Emma didn't sound frantic or upset. She answered. Mom. Emma said, calm, not a tremor in her voice. I got your letter. Clara stiffened. I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't want to blindside you. There was a pause. Then, I know about Larkin Lilly. Emma sounded oddly detached, like she'd rehearsed. Clara's mug trembled. You shouldn't. I also know you booked Rosewood for April 14. Emma's tone held no accusation, just acknowledgement. And I have to say, I'm impressed. Clara's chest constricted. What do you mean? Another pause. Clara braced. This was not the reaction she'd planned. I know that venue's non-refundable, but I wasn't worried. Emma's calm unsettled her. Because that event booked under Larkin Lilly, it was my event. I transferred the date back to my wedding. Clara replayed the words numb, transferred back. You see, Emma continued, when I saw your deposit, I quietly paid for my own. I used funds from my savings and reimbursed your deposit to Larkin Lilly. Everything is legally mine. Clara's world spun. Memory flicked to the bank confirmation. Her funds, her deposit. But Emma had arranged a parallel transaction, using her own money to secure the day. A private art event. She'd called it. Now she'd swapped it. I got the confirmation from Rosewood yesterday. April 14 is solid under Emma Whitman events. She took a breath. I knew your plan would be tempting. I expected you'd try something like that. Clara sank against her chair. She looked at the unopened letter and confirmation in her hand. She'd been so sure. Emma's voice softened just enough not to be cruel. I also had a backup plan. If you tried legal claims, I'd counter-sue for interference. I made arrangements. I'm legally covered. Clara swallowed past a lump in her throat. The victory she'd imagined shattered. She tried to speak but voice faltered. Emma continued. Mom, I'm not proud of how this escalated. I didn't want to go behind your back, but when I saw your deposit slip to Rosewood, I realized I'd have to fight for my day, or lose it. She paused. I'm sorry it became complicated. A chasm yawned between them. Clara's breath shook. Her rebellion, now revealed, felt exposed and foolish. Emma steadied herself. I'm still going to send you flowers and a seat near the front. If you want to come, I'd appreciate your presence, but I can't risk you undoing everything. Clara closed her eyes. Months of preparation, belief in her plan, gone. The space she claimed had been outmaneuvered. And if you don't come? Emma asked. Clara didn't answer. She remembered that underground river of resolve. Her phone with the letter yet unanswered. Emma continued. I have everything in place. This wedding is mine. No one can take it. No contracts. No let. The weight of Emma's words settled heavy. Clara realized she'd unleashed something she couldn't control. Emma, the distant, demanding daughter, had become deliberate, prepared, unafraid. I hope we don't have to go through legal reason to communicate, Emma said softly. I love you and I hope this doesn't destroy us. Clara barely heard the plea. She stared at the invitation in her hand, and the newly printed Rosewood confirmation beside it. What she'd believed was a bold act of reclamation now lay twisted, used. Emma sighed. I have to go. We'll talk, Mom. And the call ended. Clara stood motionless, phone still in hand. The kitchen quieted around her like a final verdict. She'd been outsmarted, outplayed by a woman she barely recognized. Tears blurred her vision, not of guilt, but of shock. She exhaled slowly, mind racing. Now what? She folded the letter and confirmation with trembling hands. The envelope remained unopened on the counter, a silent testimony to her failure, and a new kind of reckoning. She'd underestimated Emma's resolve, and paid the price. She pressed her back against the door, realizing the battlefield had expanded, and now she needed a new plan. I had to fight back. If I didn't, I'd be completely erased from her life. The house was silent. Clara sat at the edge of her bed, the phone still warm from Emma's call. Her daughter's voice so calm, so surgical, played over and over in her head. She had thought she'd seized control. She hadn't realized Emma had been playing a longer, colder game. But Clara wasn't broken. She wasn't dumb. She walked to the kitchen, turned on the faucet, and let cold water run over her wrists. The chill steadied her. Across the counter, the unopened envelope containing her original venue confirmation sat like an accusation. She picked it up, opened it, read it once, and then slowly set it aside. She didn't need that letter anymore. She needed a new strategy. By noon she was on the phone with Rosewood Manor again. This is Clara Whitman, she said evenly. I'd like to modify my existing event. The manager hesitated. I'm sorry, but as discussed, April 14 belongs to Emma Whitman Events. I'm not asking for the same slot, Clara replied. I want the evening illumination package. I'll pay in full today. Silence, then the sound of keys. We'd need to stagger the catering and reset the reception space. I'll cover the surcharge, Clara said. The manager paused. We'll send the contract this afternoon. Clara hung up. Her hands didn't shake. She sat at her desk that evening and began sketching. Not revenge. A statement. She envisioned string lights laced through flowering trees, jazz drifting over a garden terrace, velvet linens in deep lavender and navy. The seating would be small, select, artful. She would invite only those who saw her, respected her. Not because she was someone's mother, but because she existed. She called the florist next. I want moonlight peonies and night violets, she said. Soft elegance. Nothing loud. And for the name? The florist asked. Clara paused. Clara Whitman, she said, her voice firm. It's time people knew it. At the boutique, she stood tall as the seamstress, pinned fabric across her collarbone. What are we designing for? The woman asked. Clara met her gaze in the mirror. For the end of being overlooked, the dress would be deep plum with sleeves that grazed her wrists and a neckline that dared anyone to look away. No lace, no illusion, just presence. Later that night, she sat at her writing table. A new letter unfolded beneath her pen. Careful, not cruel. Emma, I've arranged an event on the evening of your wedding. Not to compete, to exist. I won't seek your approval. I've spent years trying to earn that. I don't need it anymore. I hope your wedding is beautiful, but this evening, this one's mine. If you want to join me after, I'd welcome you. If not, that's your choice. But I will not vanish quietly. Mom, she folded it and slipped it into a dark purple envelope. No wax seal this time, just her initials, clean and unadorned. The next morning, she walked the letter down to the post box. No hesitation. As she let it slip through the metal slot, she felt a ripple move through her. Not power, not revenge. Freedom. She walked home slowly, the early spring wind brushing her face. Her scarf came loose and fluttered off her shoulder. She didn't catch it. Let it move. Let it fly. Back inside, she stood in front of her full-length mirror, holding swatches of fabric and menus. She didn't see the woman who'd begged to be invited to her own daughter's life. She saw someone new, someone rising. She touched the mirror once, lightly, and smiled. The wedding might belong to Emma, but the night, that would belong to Clara, and it would never be forgotten. I had never been this focused, this determined. The wedding was going to be mine. Dawn light crept through the curtains as Clara crossed the threshold of her home, turned war room. Tables were strewn with mood boards, fabric swatches, and neatly stacked guest lists. The air hummed with anticipation, electric and resonant. She inhaled sharply. This was no subplot. This was her story's turning point. She flipped open her notebook. The event timeline glimmered across the page. Welcome cocktails at 6 hours and p.m. Live quartet at 7 Howard. Choreographed fireworks at 8:45. Each moment calibrated to arrest attention, to break the quiet she'd endured for years. First call Alex Carter, renowned jazz saxophonist. His time on tour was tight, but Clara had pulled strings. She listened as his laughter spilled into the phone. Jazz after sundown. Perfect, he agreed. We'll set up mood lighting and let the notes do the rest. Clara scribbled in purple ink. Entertainment confirmed. Soulful. Unexpected. Next invitations. She had designed them herself. Thick cardstock, embossed with ivory filigree, inked in deep plum. The envelopes bore only her name. No mention of Emma. She paused before sealing the first, thinking of Emma's hard boundaries. But this line in the sand was hers alone. By late morning, Grace, her longtime friend, arrived bearing boxes of crystal glasses and ribbon-wrapped favors. Together, they draped tablecloths and arranged place settings under the soft glow of chandelier faux candles. You're brilliant, Grace said. This will feel intimate, fierce, the way you are. Clara smiled, steady with purpose. Grace didn't need permission to support her. That felt revolutionary. In the afternoon sun, Clara stepped into the kitchen of her event space setup and dialed the final number. Chef Lorenzo, a Michelin-trained maestro, known for reinventing comfort food. Moonlit tasting menu, she requested. Go bold. Think lavender duck confit, next to honeyed parsnip puree. He chuckled. Only if we serve a violet-laced champagne spritzer. Her grin grew. Done. As evening approached, Clara retreated to the foyer to review her guest list. No Emma's college friends or acquaintances from Emma's world, just people who loved her. Neighbors, book club allies, former colleagues. Grace and Alex, what had once been a subtle erasure, became a curated stage, built by someone finally visible. She tapped an app on her phone, confirmed catering, lighting, seating. Notifications pinged like heartbeat echoes. Lighting vendor confirmed. Chef confirmed. Invitations sent. She paused, exhausted but alive. The hallway mirror caught her reflection. Teal shawl from a bygone era draped over her arm, now swapped for a jacket in her events palette. Her hair was brushed back, eyes bright. Clara no longer recognized the shrinking volunteer from years before. She saw someone who had chosen her. Night closed in. She stepped outside to test the courtyard lights. Warm bulbs glowed around budding trees, silhouettes dancing across trimmed hedges. A distant saxophone riff floated upward as Alex and his quartet rehearsed. Notes curled through the air like smoke rings of defiance, of reclaiming voice. Perfect, Clara whispered. Alone again inside, she waited for Grace's final message. Tomorrow night. Your night. Don't doubt it. She placed her hand over her heart and closed her eyes. The adrenaline wrapped around her. This event was more than spectacle. It was the reclamation of years she'd surrendered. She pressed her palms to the invitation embossed in her hands and thought of Emma, tight-jawed, matter-of-fact, exclusionary. That daughter had given Clara a gift, the chance to stop vanishing and begin commanding space. Clara lit a single rose-scented candle in the hall and watched the flame wobble. Then, softly, she muttered to herself, "This is more than a wedding now. It's my declaration." In the hush before dawn, Clara slid into bed, the architect of her own rebirth. The night would belong to her, and the world would remember. The day had arrived, and everything was in place. But there was one final touch I hadn't anticipated. Sunlight warmed the courtyard as Clara arrived, jacket draped, heels silent on cobblestone. She paused at the entrance, savoring the hush before the guests flooded in. This was her moment. She tucked her hands into pockets and surveyed the scene, clusters of Emma's attendees in pastel chiffon, light laughter mingling with the garden's gentle breeze. But Clara didn't belong to their world anymore. She belonged to this one structured, intentional, hers. Emma's procession began. Clara watched from afar, her daughter radiant, stepping into a life Clara had once thought closed off. Pride lanced through her chest, then certainty. This wedding wasn't Emma's alone. Her own guests arrived now. Classic cars rolled in, champagne-colored vintage convertibles, carrying Clara's allies. Grace stepped out first, glass of sparkling elderflower in hand, eyes bright with approval. Then Alex and his quartet, suited and calm, close friends followed, each one bearing a glimpse of Clara's real life. Their presence rippled through the gathering, silk scarves, quiet smiles, propped posture they wouldn't apologize for. Whispers circled, "Is that Mrs. Whitman? She looks stunning." The recognition warmed Clara more than 1,000 bouquets. She slipped among them, nodding and murmuring, letting their energy anchor her. Every compliment, "Your dress is phenomenal. What a night." Each confirmation soothed wounds left by Emma's earlier exclusion. As the ceremony progressed, Clara's focus narrowed. She watched Emma standing poised beneath the arbor. The music shifted, Alex's quartet sliding into a soft jazz piece, reserved for vows. Emotion fluttered, petals trembled in the air. Clara's lips quirked at the edges. "It's all working." Behind her back, someone cleared their throat. Turning slightly, Clara noticed Emma's planner hovering, stiff jaw, eyes wide. Something flickered between shock and defeat. Clara nodded once, measured, calm, checkmate. Then Clara felt a pang of unease. Emma had been meticulous earlier. Perhaps one more twist lay ahead. Her balloon fluttered inward, unexpected, handwritten note tucked between flowers at her station. She picked it up, heart clenching as she read, "For you, Mom. Thank you for reclaiming your space in my world. Love, E." Tears welled. Not because Emma softened, but because even here, unconventional and unasked for, Emma included her. Clara folded the note and slipped it into her dress pocket, heartbeat steady again. She sipped her champagne, as voices rose in celebration, but she didn't linger on the glass. Instead, she watched the ceremony conclude, Emma and Daniel kissing beneath olive branches, guests rising in applause. The sax echoed in the background, warm and curling. Clara's gaze shifted to the sea of faces, hers within it finally. No guilt, no apology, only presence. A hush fell before the speeches. Grace stepped forward, raising a glass to Clara, soft eyes saying, "I see you." In that moment, Clara realized this night was never about overshadowing Emma. It was about shining alongside her, on her own. But the night held one final moment. As Emma turned away from the bridegroom, Clara spotted her pause. A hand slid into Emma's bouquet, then Emma pressed something between petals. Clara moved closer, voice still, asking Grace's help to follow the moment. She caught Emma's eye for 1 second. Only one, too quick, nearly lost. But there was recognition, something shifting. The ceremony ended. Laughter took over, but Clara lingered. She adjusted her shawl, heart light, except for the note still resting in Emma's bouquet. Clara wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew this. Tonight, beyond ceremony and vows, she'd planted something irreversible. What Emma would find in her bouquet tomorrow would define their future. The note was the final straw, but Emma's reaction was something I never could have predicted. Sunlight softened as dusk settled over the rosewood courtyard. Clara lingered near the back of the crowd, shawl crisp against her shoulders, champagne glass cooling in her hand. The note, "I have the venue, the wedding's mine now," rested quietly within Emma's bouquet, a quiet declaration poised to shatter the polished evening. From the aisle, Clara watched Emma lift the bouquet with steady hands. As she unfolded the blooms, her brow tightened. She paused, confusion flickered in her eyes. Then the smile she'd worn fractured. A ripple moved across the guests. The stained glass windows caught their eyes. Gasps erupted. Conversation stopped mid-breath. Emma drew the note free. Words on petals. "I have the venue. The wedding's mine now." Her shoulders dropped. Then her lips tightened with rage. She looked up, accusing. Her gaze roamed, first to her groom, then to guests, then to Clara, standing poised, unreadable. "Mom," Emma's voice rang across the hush, brittle and fast. "What on earth is this?" The bouquet fell limply into her hand. She advanced on Clara, heels clicking. Clara stood her ground, calm, deliberate. "You wanted space," she answered softly. "I gave it back." Emma's laugh was harsh. "I gave everything for this day, and now you're trying to steal it." Her voice broke through the tension, echoing off the marble. Guests shuffled, whispers rising. The violist faltered, notes trailing. The officiant paused, mid-sentence. Everything stopped. Emma glared. "This is beyond petty." Clara lifted her chin. "Maybe, but I'm here." Emma shook with fury. "This is my wedding. You're interfering." Clara's smile was small, unapologetic. "I've created a night of meaning, one I no longer invisible." Emma's face flushed, tears threatening. She pulled out her phone and spoke into it. "Yes, police. Please." Clara's heart clenched. The plan had been audacious, but never criminal. She swallowed hard. Emma peered at her mother, voice sharp. "You'll ruin everything. And embarrass me." The first siren wailed in the distance. Clara's pulse thundered. She glanced at her guests. Grace, Alex, their eyes steady, confidence in her corner. She took a deep breath. She took a step forward. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I reclaimed my life." Emma's voice cracked. "This is my celebration." Clara's gaze softened as soft as steel. "This is ours now." Sirens crescendoed. The courtyard's energy splintered into panic and curiosity. The umbra of tension halted laughter, snapped attention. Emma staggered. "If they arrest you," her voice faltered. I'll regret this." Clara looked at her daughter, so composed moments before, now fractured. She realized the magnitude of what she'd set into motion. A uniformed officer appeared at the entrance, silhouetted. He met Clara's eyes, then Emma's, assessing the scene. Note petals on gravel, guests stirring. Paul, the venue manager, hovered behind them. His expression said, "I don't know what to make of this." Emma swallowed. She raised a hand. "Off, officer." She paused, chest heaving. "She's orchestrated some event. I want no part in this." The officer stepped forward, holster jangling. Clara straightened. She'd expected confrontation, but not this scale, this public reckoning. Around them, the crowd shifted, murmurs growing. Clara felt the weight of eyes, sympathy, judgment, disbelief. Emma's whisper trembled. "I'm calling Daniel's parents." Clara closed her eyes. She hadn't wanted this. She wanted presence, not chaos. But here it was, an irreversible rupture between the elegant surface and brutal truth. The policeman held up a hand. "Ma'am, I'll need your ID. And you," he gestured to Emma, "I need your statement as well." Clara reached into her clutch, pulling out her license. The moment felt surreal, her motherhood meeting her autonomy under flashing police lights. She inhaled deeply, calm returning. One more note remained in her heart. "This night belongs to me, and maybe the world will witness it." She met Emma's eyes, defiant still there, and nodded slightly. Even here, surrounded by uniformed authority, stunned guests, Clara felt rooted. The officer, as he spoke her name, Clara realized her quiet rebellion had broken through, but now it would face the reckoning she never planned for. "I never thought it would come to this, but there was one person who could make this right." The courtyard buzzed with confusion as uniformed officers stepped forward, voices clipped. Clara's heart hammered in her chest, an unfamiliar and fierce pulse that mingled fear and triumph. She met Emma's frozen glare, anger and panic rippling across her daughter's face. But then a calm voice sliced through the chaos. Miriam Whitman, her childhood friend, emerged from the crowd, strides purposeful, a lawyer by trade. She clasped Clara's arm. "Mom, Step aside. I'll handle this. Clara exhaled. Miriam, a beacon of steady reason, moved to confront the leads. With deliberate poise, she approached the nearest officer, extending a silk-gloved hand. Officer, I'm Miriam Whitman, legal counsel for Ms. Whitman, she said softly but firmly. My mother has booked this venue, contractually binding, under her name. Please allow me to clarify. The officer looked between Miriam and Clara, waiting. Miriam opened her briefcase and pulled documents. Clara's booking contract, signed agreements, deposit confirmations. There's no dispute. April 14 is legally hers. Emma's name was added later, but the primary reservation belongs to Clara. She folded the papers and offered them forward. Emma's jaw clenched. She stormed up behind Miriam, voice trembling with rage. Miriam, you can't. The initial booking belongs to me. Dad paid for it. Miriam turned to her gently, eyes cool and considerate. Emma, per the initial terms, your father reimbursed her deposit with your money only after Clara reserved it. The official record shows Clara as the contracting party. Emma's shoulders sagged, disbelief flooding. The officers glanced at each other, nodding behind folded forms. The lead officer stepped back. Ma'am, he said to Miriam, we need no further involvement. The matter is contractual. We're standing down. Miriam inclined her head. When the officers turned to leave, the crowd exhaled, tension snapping like a rubber band. Clara, shaken but steadying, stared at Emma, who fought tears now. Miriam moved to wrap an arm around Clara's shoulders. In your moment, Miriam murmured. Claim it. Clara straightened, her spine unbreakable. The guests, quiet but attentive, looked between mother and daughter with a new realization. This was no longer the wedding they expected. Here, underneath the rose-colored evening, Clara felt the weight of every emotion she'd buried, betrayal, erasure, defiance, solidify into present. Miriam whispered, it's your night. As twilight deepened, draped lights across the arches flickered on. The quintet struck a final chord. Grace stepped forward with a champagne glass raised. To Clara, she toasted. To presence, power, and refusing the shadows. Glasses clinked. Onlookers nodded. What had begun as an intimate gathering around Emma's union had shifted. This was now Clara's declaration. Emma, pale and trembling, stormed past Clara and Miriam. She pressed her lips in a tremulous line. You'll regret this, she hissed. Don't think I won't. Clara's breath caught, a flicker of something else thundered behind it. Not fear, recognition. As Emma disappeared behind the manicured hedges, the guests watched the daughter vanish into night, leaving the mother standing at dawn's board. Clara's gaze swiveled to her allies. Grace, Alex, even Miriam, tight-knit as armor. She realized she'd taken back what was hers. Not just space, not just ceremony, but agency. Hands steady, she raised her glass in silent celebration. Grace met her eyes and mouth. You did it. Clara nodded, voice lost in the moment, but her heart roared a quiet vow. This night is mine. Tonight I stand unafraid. She slipped her hand into Miriam's, stepping forward into the glow of unexpected allies, champagne and conquered fear. As the celebration swelled around her and Emma's threat echoed in her bones, Clara understood the reckoning had begun, and she was both victor and survivor of her own story. Emma might have thought she was finished with me, but I was about to make sure she never forgot this day. Twilight softened into evening. As guests settled, laughter drifting through the strings of lights overhead, Clara moved among them, touching arms, holding glasses, her smile steady. This wasn't Emma's wedding anymore. It was her own, rich with reclamation and purpose. Emma, framed by bridesmaids in pale pink, stood rigid at the edge of Clara's territory. Their eyes locked briefly, a silent clash of past hurts and present triumphs. The bridesmaids whispered, casting wary glances. Emma's jaw clenched. A hush fell as Grace guided Clara to the center of the gathering. Alex's sax whispered a warm intro as Clara raised her glass. Thank you all, she began, voice calm and resonant. Tonight is about presence, about being seen and honored. Glasses clinked, candles glowed brighter. From the fringe, Emma advanced, shoulders squared but uncertain. Clara set her glass down, hand brushing the floral arranged podium. She braced herself for confrontation, resolution, maybe relief. Emma's voice, when she spoke, trembled with both accusation and pain. This was supposed to be my day, she said, eyes flicking over guests. You took everything down to the last candle. A murmur swept through the crowd. The tension bristled like thunderclouds over still water. Clara drew in breath, voice unflinching. This was always your day, Emma. What I've taken was nothing but space. Space I was never allowed before. She paused, heart steady. I didn't steal your joy. I stepped into the life I never let myself claim. Around them, guests leaned in. Grace's eyes flashed support. Alex, even the fades of tension felt charged with watching. Emma's cheeks flushed. You ruined everything, she spat, glancing at her groom, who exchanged confused looks with the officiant. Clara's tone softened, but still held steel. You erased me, my presence, my voice, all to create a picture-perfect backdrop. You never saw me, Emma. She stepped closer. So I made my own. The bridesmaids stiffened. The air held Emma's rage and Clara's resolve like twin flames. Emma inhaled sharply. So what now? You'll be part of every event. Follow me the rest of my life. Her voice cracked raw. Clara met her gaze. No, this isn't about motherly attendance. It's about respect. I deserve space. This night was mine by contract, not spite. She paused. Tears glimmered in her eyes. I don't want to ruin your life, Emma, but I won't vanish for it either. Emma froze, realization warring with resentment. Moments stretched like fragile glass. Then, with shaking breath, she turned away. I can't, she whispered, voice breaking. I can't do that. She stormed off, carried by murmurs and fading heels echoing across the lawn. Clara watched her go, her heart cracked but unbroken. She closed her eyes, centered herself. This was the reckoning she'd built. Emma's departure sealed it. Grace emerged, resting a hand on Clara's arm. You did it, she murmured. Clara nodded, tears slipping but unashamed. The gathering shifted, circling back to celebration. Alex's quartet resumed their tune, warm and jazzy. Clara lifted her gaze to the horizon, the incandescent culmination of sunset and lamplight. She lifted her glass once more for herself than for guests. To beginnings, she whispered to Grace. Mine. Guests raised their glasses again. Champagne fizzed. Conversation returned. Clara moved among the night, unburdened. Her heels clicked with purpose. Later, she slipped to the edge of the courtyard. The night air crisp. Her phone buzzed. She paused, pulse quickening. Was it Emma returning with apology, or someone else? The buzzing grew louder against the distant laughter. Clara reached slowly into her purse, fingers curling around the phone. She took a breath of star-scented air, heart steady, knowing whatever next came, she'd face it on her terms. She answered the phone, and the night waited, because this time, the story belonged to her. Everything has changed, and now I get to decide what happens next. Morning light filtered into Clara's apartment, washing over the scattered wedding remnants, champagne flutes, torn floral accents, and the delicate note tucked in her purse. She stretched, folded back the blanket, and stood with a sense of ease she hadn't felt in years. The night had belonged to her, not her daughter, not expectations. Now came what she'd been afraid to imagine, what she would build. In the kitchen, Grace and Miriam sat with mugs of strong coffee. Grace brushed a bit of lavender from her dress, smiling at Clara. How are you feeling? Alive, Clara answered, weirdly calm. Miriam nodded. That storm cleared the air. She slid over a notebook. Now what's next? Clara ran her fingers over the pages. I've always wanted to open my little event catering business, a place for intimate gatherings. Art meets food. Like last night, she paused. Maybe it's time. That afternoon, she met with a boutique landlord in a sunlit studio space. Grace tagged along. Clara walked each room, hardwood floors, open kitchen, high ceilings. They measured, sketched, and rhymed possibilities with purpose. Miriam was texting behind them, loan pre-approval in place. A smile spread across Clara's face. Over the next week, Clara worked on the business plan, driving between accountant meetings, supplier tastings, and branding calls. Each milestone ticked another layer of doubt away. She paused to stare at her laptop, realizing she was making decisions on her own terms, without invitation or permission. Evenings found her at new dinner parties, a book club that invited her, a creative collective that asked her to join. These strangers turned friends referred to her simply as Clara. No mother of the bride, no mom, just Clara, owner, creator, person. One evening, she and Miriam walked home under lantern-lit streets. Miriam squeezed her arm. When you own that space, your name will be on that door. Clara's heart fluttered. And then what? Miriam laughed softly. Then you see how far it can go. Late one night, Clara stood at her balcony, the skyline twinkling. She thought of last night's guests, their applause, the hush when Emma walked away, the tremor of independence she'd summoned. She realized she didn't need their approval to feel complete. She'd built her own world and people chose to join it. Days later, the lease arrived. She signed with a flourish. She'd secured her dream space. She felt an ache, briefly, for what had been lost, but it softened into acceptance. That chapter had closed. This one was hers. On opening night, Clara welcomed a curated crowd, artists, foodies, friends old and new. The studio glowed with fairy lights. Guests murmured approvingly as they sipped violet spritzers. She matched their words with calm confidence. She was seen, respected, home. After the event, alone in the empty space, she leaned against the counter, her phone vibrated. An unknown address. She paused, thumb hovering. From Emma. Mom, I'm proud of you. Can we talk? Clara's breath steadied. She stared at the message, mind racing through the scars and survival. A moment stretched, a hinge between old wounds and new possibility. She set the phone down gently. Tomorrow she'd decide, this time, on her terms. I'm no longer someone's background character. I've reclaimed my own life. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of Clara's studio as she unlocked the door, ready to start the day. The place already hummed with promise. Catering orders lined up, paint-splattered tables prepped for a tasting event later. She paused in the doorway, inhaling the scent of lavender-infused bread and citrus candles. She smiled. This was hers. Months had passed since launch night. Clara's business, Gather and Grace Events, was flourishing. She'd curated a spring brunch for 30, overseen a gallery fundraiser, and booked an international wedding package. Reviews reflected quieter praise. Her calm presence made our day at once intimate and unforgettable. Each accolade felt like confirmation, not praise from others, but validation of her truth. That afternoon, Grace joined her for a midweek trip to a small airport. They had booked a flight to Lisbon, 7 days of art, pastel buildings, and freedom. As they settled into the lounge, Grace nudged her. To new worlds. Could she have ever imagined booking travel with her friends, without worry over whose calendar it fit? She hugged her friend. The fullness of that moment, of agency, made her heart expand. At sunset over Alfama, Clara watched the Tagus River shimmer golden. For the first time she recognized the unspoken beauty of her own pace. No rushing, no permission needed, just presence. She pressed her journal against her chest, writing, I'm living. Back home, a quiet ping on her phone broke the peaceful blur. It was Emma again. Clara, I know Lisbon would be refreshing. I'm glad you're finding yourself. Can we talk when you return? Clara closed her eyes. She recognized the attempt, but she also recognized her own boundary. After a moment, she replied, thank you. I'll reach out once I'm back. No reflexive surrender, no overshadowing of herself. Lisbon's pastel alleys wound around them, but so did Clara's renewed love for life. She sketched fountains and tasted custard tarts, laughing over cappuccinos with Grace. She felt light, intentional, and alive, reminders that life extended beyond old wounds. When they returned, Clara walked into a delivery of olive branches and calla lilies, supplies for a local author's luncheon she'd organized. She placed them in vases, thinking of growth and tenderness. Grace appeared, arms full of takeaway coffee. You're glowing, she said, echoing Lisbon's compliments. Clara nodded. That evening, she gathered Miriam and a few new friends in the studio. The light dimmed, wine poured, and conversation wove around plans, international retreats, workshop series, possible podcast idea. Clara realized she was no longer a student of life. She was a teacher, a creator, a community center. Later, Clara sat alone by the back door, the moonlight pooling on her notebook. She reflected on the woman who had arrived here, once erased, now anchored in a life of her design. Often she still thought of Emma, but the memories were no longer fuel for sorrow. They were echoes she no longer obeyed. A knock at the studio door startled her, a delivery envelope, no return. Inside, Gather and Grace Events, Lisbon romantic package, horror personal note. It read, congratulations, here's to your next chapter. Clara held it close, heart steady. This wasn't just surprise, it was affirmation that her life was moving forward far beyond that courtyard showdown. Grace joined her at the door. It's amazing, Clara said softly. To know there's more. She glanced at Lisbon again, her first solo trip post-launch pending planning, and the package reminder. Months later, reviews rolled in for the Lisbon package, couples booking under Clara's tailored experiences, naming her visionary, restorative guide. She leaned against her office wall, the afternoon light warm. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. The phone buzzed, an email notification, from Emma. Hi Clara, I hope you're well. I wanted to share I've started therapy and am working on myself. I'd like to attend your Lisbon retreat next year. Let me know what you think. Clara paused, heart stirring with complex emotion, hope, caution, curiosity. She tapped open her journal and wrote, "She's knocking again. Now I decide." She closed the lid and exhaled. This time, her story and the invitation would be guided by her terms. Just when I thought I was free, something happened that changed everything. The golden afternoon light in Clara's studio seemed softer than usual. She was putting finishing touches on a sketch for an upcoming Lisbon retreat when a cream envelope appeared at the door, unassuming but deliberate. Her heart fluttered as she recognized Emma's handwriting, delicate script once so familiar and yet estranged. She closed the journal gently, her hands still. The room fell silent. She slit the envelope and drew out the letter, feeling its weight both in her hands and in her chest. "Dear Mom, I haven't known how to say this or if I deserved to." Clara paused. Her breath hitched. She sank into the velvet armchair, the letter unfolding like a fragile bridge. Emma's words spilled across the page with surprising vulnerability. She wrote of the wedding day, the confrontation, the crowd, the humiliation for both of them. She acknowledged her coldness, the silent exclusion, and the gulf she created. She confessed how deeply it hurt to realize she'd erased her mother. Tears blurred Clara's vision. "She's seeing me," thought Clara, chest unraveling with shock and sorrow. The letter shifted tone. Emma expressed quiet regret, admitting she'd taken Clara's warmth and sacrifices for granted. She described therapy sessions and long nights of regret, asking if reconciliation was possible, not to erase the past, but to begin anew. As Clara read the final lines, "I hope you can forgive me. I miss you." She closed the letter, breathing deep. The weight of it lingered. Grace appeared quietly in the doorway, her presence grounding. "You okay?" she asked softly. Clara nodded, folding the letter into her lap. "It's heartfelt," she said, voice trembling. "She's more broken than I thought." She placed the letter on the coffee table as though handling something precious and fragile. Grace sat beside her. "You don't have to answer now." That evening, Clara walked the garden path behind her studio. The breeze touched her with memories, past fights, weddings, absence. Emma's words echoed in her mind. She realized she'd built this life to reclaim herself, but now faced a different evolution, maybe even healing. Back inside, she found Emma's letter again and read the final twist. Emma's marriage wasn't as she'd hoped. She's struggling, feels unmoored, and, if Clara would be willing, she'd like to talk. Not fix everything, but start. Clara traced her independence, her agency, had been hers to reclaim, but this felt different, an invitation into shared vulnerability. That night, Clara sat with Miriam over tea. The studio lights dimmed around them. She let the letter spill across the table. Miriam listened. "She's asking more than forgiveness," she said. "She's asking for you." Clara nodded, tears glistening. "I'd built something for me, but maybe this could be something together." Miriam offered quiet strength. "Your boundaries matter, your strength matters. But if you want to walk back together, you choose how and when." Clara closed her eyes. "I want to, but on my terms." Over the weekend, Clara reread the letter 4 times. She felt gratitude, hesitation, and a fragile hope. She realized this crossroads wasn't about proving strength. It was about choosing with grace. She drafted a gentle reply. "Emma, thank you for your honesty and courage. I'm proud of you for saying these things. I'd like to meet just us to talk about what comes next. Let me know when we're love. Mom." She paused before clicking send. No apology, no rushing, just invitation. That afternoon, an email notification popped up. "Emma, I'm free Thursday evening. Could we meet at the cafe near your studio?" Clara paused, her pulse steadied. She slid the email close. The sun cast long shadows through the studio, Warmth and coolness mingled. She walked to the window, looking out onto the blossoming tree-lined street. She tapped her fingers on the sill. She turned from the window and opened her journal. Beneath the words, "New Beginnings," she wrote, "I have the strength and the choice to rebuild what matters. The path ahead is mine." She closed the book, and whatever came next, she'd approach it on her terms. Things are never perfect, but sometimes they're better than you could have imagined. A soft spring breeze drifted through the open cafe window. As Clara stirred her tea, settled across from Emma, they'd chosen this space together, neutral ground, light-filled. Months after the letter, this was their first meeting beyond surface-level pleasantries. Clara felt the quiet hum of anticipation, of work left undone. Emma arrived, tentative heels clicking on the pavement. She paused, took a steadying breath, then offered a small open smile. Clara responded in kind, both aware of the distance that still lay between them. No hug yet. This was careful territory. "I've been looking forward to this," Emma began. "I want to say again, I'm sorry." Clara caught her gaze. "Thank you. I've needed time just like you've needed to find your footing." Her tone was warm, anchored. Emma exhaled, relief flickering. "I've been seeing someone, a counselor, and after everything, I understand how you felt, erased, sidelined." She paused. "I'm rebuilding." Slowly. Clara nodded, compassion steady in her eyes. "It takes courage to admit that." They spent the early moments gently, coffee, sunlit conversation, small talk about the season. Then Emma shared stories, how married life hadn't matched her rosy expectations, how grief over the chaos and her mother's absence began to settle in. Clara listened, truly listened, without interjecting. Each pause in Emma's voice felt sacred. She recognized how far they'd come. Once Clara was displaced, now she was simply present. "I know I can't undo what happened," Emma said, voice softening, "but I want to show up now if you let me." Clara folded her hands. "I work from home someday. I'd love your company at the studio to see what I've been building." Tears surfaced in Emma's eyes, glimmering gratitude. "I'd like that." Later, they walked through Clara's sunroom, plants leaning toward the light, her journals stacked by the window. Emma admired, processed ideas on a corkboard, Lisbon retreat expansions, new client packages. She paused at a framed review, her calm presence. Emma read it aloud. "That you." Clara looked away, softly proud. "I used to think it meant sacrificing myself. Now I know it can mean supporting others without vanishing." That evening, Clara returned to her studio to finalize details for the upcoming retreat. She emailed partners, sketched menus, rang up local bakeries. Emma appeared shortly after, offering help. They worked side by side, quiet teamwork, natural and unforced. In a moment of coherence, Clara realized she no longer needed to choose between daughter or self. She could have both on her terms. Weeks turned into gentle routines. Clara balanced retreat planning with meetings and phone calls. Emma stopped by for breakfasts afterward. No guilt, no demands, just genuine moments. Their voices, once distant, found familiar rhythms. Grace and Miriam saw the shift. Over weekend dinners, Emma spoke freely about emotional growth. Clara smiled. This was not perfection, but authenticity. At one point, Clara hosted a preview event in her studio, a Lisbon-themed evening, lavender spritzers, pastel tapas, invitations in Emma's bouquet care of Gather and Grace. Emma floated around, proud of Clara's work and eased by belonging. Clara looked at her daughter, gratitude shining. It wasn't the closure of a chapter, but the beginning of a new one, a mutual respect regained. Late that night, Clara penned in her journal, "We're not the same as we were, we're better." She paused, reflecting on the scars laid to rest by courage and choice. She closed the page, heart full, and phone buzzed on her desk. A new email showed. Subject: speaking opportunity from Midlife Stories Collective. "Hi Clara, we loved your story and would like to invite you to speak at our next event." Her breath caught not at relation, but expansion, a chance to articulate not just recovery, but rebirth. Clara's phone glowed in the midnight hush. She tapped open the message. As she read the invitation, her lips curved into a quiet, steady smile. The journey was far from over, and for the first time, the possibilities belonged to her alone. "My story has only just begun, and now I'm ready to live it on my terms." Early morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains of Clara's studio apartment. She stretched, letting the warmth settle into her bones. The studio, once a milestone, now felt ordinary, stepping stone to something broader. She glanced at the travel mug in her hand and thought today, a quick video call with Lisbon Retreat Partners filled her screen. She shared updates on upcoming bookings, speaking topics, and the creative duo behind the event's design. Seeing their excitement, she felt matched in purpose, a far cry from the woman whose world used to shrink. After the call, she walked to a local market. Stalls brimmed with heirloom tomatoes, fresh bread, artisan cheese. She breathed in the scent of possibility. A stallholder complimented her tote, and she returned the friendliness without hesitation. Clara didn't disappear anymore. Back home, Grace arrived with smiles and news. The studio had been invited to host a seasonal craft exhibition. They want you front and center, Clara, Grace said. They believe in your vision. Clara's heart caught not just a dream, but real validation from a community that saw her. That evening found Clara and Emma sharing dinner at her kitchen table, dishes from the market laid out. Conversation wove around future travel retreat themes and business goals. Emma listened with genuine curiosity, no hidden agenda, no exasperated sighs, just mutual respect. After dinner, Emma stood in the doorway. I know we have boundaries, she said gently, but would you want to go with me to my friend's art opening next week? Clara recognized the offering. I see you and I'm including you, she smiled. I'd like that. Weeks later, Clara found herself on a solo flight to Kyoto, an independent trip she'd planned months ago. She carried little beyond her journal and a camera. On arrival, she wandered through bamboo forest and sat in silent temples, feeling the pulse of the world around her. She realized how far she'd come, alone at peace, joyfully curious. One evening, she climbed a hill overlooking the city, the lantern-lit roofs unfolding beneath her. She wrote in her journal, I was background, now I'm the author. The words felt true and the moment felt timeless. Back in her studio, things hummed in steady rhythm. Retreat bookings filled the calendar. Mira, her small team buzzed with creative energy. She mentored a new workshop partner, her confidence contagious. The promise of legacy felt tangible. On another quiet Sunday, Clara and Emma met again, this time at the gallery. Emma introduced her mother to colleagues. Clara laughed as she admired abstract paintings, feeling like herself but better. Emma's hand slid into hers, and unspoken gratitude passing between them. That night, Clara wrote in her journal, we're not perfect, but we're honest, and that's enough. She paused, reflecting on that weekend. Next morning the market called again, with reusable bags in hand. Clara greeted the vendors by name. Calls came in for retreat engagements in Prague and Amalfi. She sketched moodboard concepts on a cafe napkin, excited to see possibilities bloom. Later, back home, the phone buzzed. A message lit the screen. Gather and Grace Retreat, Leader Spotlight video interview, live next month. She exhaled with quiet pride. She placed her hand on the phone and let a smile unfold, not about fame, but affirmation of a path she fought to claim. For the first time fully free, she whispered, yes. Clara stepped into a future of her own making. Travel, purpose, love, autonomy. The journey wasn't ending. It was beginning again, with boundaries, with courage, with all possibilities open.